Welcome to Ceasefire, where civics meets civility and engagement meets empowerment. Ceasefire is hosted by former Bernie ISD trustee and owner of the Bernie Bookshop, Dale Adams, and by former Bernie City Council member and local insurance agent, Ron Cisneros. Ready, aim, ceasefire.
Good morning, Kendall County. My name is Dale Adams.
And I'm Ron Cisneros.
And this is Ceasefire. Thank you for listening to us today. And today's show is Stewardship. And it's sort of the third of a three-part series that we talked about some ownership. What do you really own? What do you not own? And now we're going to talk about stewardship.
Yeah. And why are we going to talk about stewardship? Well, in summary, if we go back over the last two shows, we looked at the legal and sort of philosophical idea of ownership, and we kind of came to the conclusion that, you probably don't really own much of anything except maybe your choices, your character, and so really we're just kind of stewards. So that's what we're going to talk about.
Yes. And I found something interesting about the word stewardship. The concept is biblical. I mean, it goes all the way back to when God said, hey, take care of my creation. But the word stewardship actually was created by the Protestant churches in North America in the late 19th century, when churches stopped being supported as much by governments and organizations, and they wanted to encourage people to donate more. And I thought that was odd. And I think that's sort of gone away as far as a focus of it.
Right.
But I thought that was interesting that the word itself comes from a giving perspective rather than a taking care of something perspective.
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad you brought that up because, one of the first things that I wanted to reference was Psalms 24:1. The earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who live in it. And so if we look at that and we accept that, then there really is nothing that's ours, right? I mean, it's all His. We're His creation. So stewardship comes into play. Everything that we have, everything that we possess is given to us on a temporary loan, and you the old saying, you can't take it with you.
Yeah.
And so I looked at that and I thought, okay, well, does that idea extend beyond Christianity? And so I looked at the Buddhist concept, for example, or their perspective. And I'm not sure I'm going to pronounce this right, but they have this word, and I think it's Tanha, T-A-N-H-A, and the interpretation of that is craving. And this was interesting as I was doing a deep dive into this. They talk about clinging to things. That's what that word it means. And so you cling to things like people, ideas, your own identity of yourself. And once you cling to something or become attached to it, then you develop a fear of losing that thing.
Yeah.
And when you have that sense of fear and you realize that nothing's permanent, you're eventually going to lose it. And that fear then makes you suffer.
So possessing things makes you suffer.
Yes. Possession
that's
is
interesting.
Is equal to suffering. Right. And so I thought, wow, that's really deep. Right.
Yeah.
And so, well, what do the Hindus think? Now, this word I'm going to totally butcher. My apologies to anybody out there, but I believe it's Bhagavad, Gita, their version of the Bible, or their I don't know what you'd call it. Their
holy writings.
Their holy writing.
Yeah.
And so this was something that Krishna shared with Arjuna, and he says to him, you came into this world with nothing, and you will leave this world with nothing. Well, that sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Yep.
And then I thought, okay, well, what about the Native American idea? And now there are too many tribes to get into all of this, but I found two perspectives that I thought were interesting. And in this one, I'm really going to butcher the Haudenosaunee-based decisions on the impact, to a seventh generation. So here's this idea of stewardship, right? And so we don't own anything.
Yeah.
And anything that we decide to do with land or possessions, we have to consider all the way to the seventh generation.
How far back does that go in their culture?
I don't know.
Is that because that's biblical too? Because they talked about seventh generation.
Is that correct? So, all of that was just fascinating to me. This idea that, and I've thought about this a long time, that, we really don't own much, but to see that across cultures, and there's this theme, you know, that, there's really not a whole lot that you have, just this temporary possession.
You have a duty.
Yeah.
You have, and it, for anybody that's doesn't want to listen to the religious side, there's the secular side. It's the same thing. Stephen Jay Gould was a naturalist who wrote a lot about evolution, very much a secularist and all that kind of stuff. But he said, we have become, by the power of a glorious evolutionary accident called intelligence, the stewards of life's continuity on Earth. We did not ask for this role, but we cannot abjure it. We may not be suited to it, but here we are. So stewardship is not necessarily about, oh, I'm the best person to do this or take care of this object or land or my life or whatever. But you're there, and you are responsible, and so it's up to you to take care of whatever it is you feel like you own.
Yeah. So, and then along the same theme that you have on the religious side. You know,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. There's, well, I think the environmental movement comes in large part from this feeling of stewardship.
Yeah.
That we are now the dominant creature, and our impact is pretty dramatic, and so it's time for us to start thinking about our impact and making decisions based on what our impact is, instead of just what we want out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Dale, what about time? Do we have ownership of that, or is that a...
Oh, wow.
Right. I mean, this is deep. I thought about this as I was preparing for the show. I was thinking, well, what about time? Like, you know, because we talked, I guess it was 2 shows ago, or maybe it was last week's show, we were talking about the things that the Stoics said you could own, you know, your character, your choices, decisions, judgments.
Yeah.
But what about time?
I would say we own our time, and we may not know how much of it there is or how many holes in the basket there are or whatever, but I would say we do own our time. That might be something external that we actually own.
Right. Perhaps. Yes. And then again, I look at it because I really spent a lot of time thinking about this, and it's like, well, again, this could be one of those other things that's given to us on loan, and nobody truly knows how much time they have. So they've got this. And then it's the only thing that they really have ownership of then is how they decide to use the time.
So their time in the past. You don't own your time going forward, but you own your time in the past, which is your decisions.
Right.
Right. I mean, maybe we're sort of turning time into an object when it's not necessarily an object.
Oh,
I don't know.
Okay, Einstein. You're going to lose me.
Yeah. Well, actually, along these lines, R.C. Sproul, who I'm not sure who he is, but he had a saying that I thought was pretty neat. The worst sin against stewardship is to waste your life. And that's about time.
Yeah.
It's about what you do with your time. And whether you go out and you actually accomplish something, or you have purpose in your life, or whether you sit and, play video games and watch TV all day.
Which makes me think of, because I'm the music guy, Pink Floyd's classic song, Time.
Yeah.
Right? And it's a song about this guy that, just sitting there, just enjoying his life, and wakes up 10 years later and realizes like 10 years have now passed and he's done absolutely nothing with that time.
Yeah.
Right. And again, this goes back to stewardship. Right. He has stewardship over his time, probably not ownership. This is a fascinating question to me because I still don't really know how I feel about that. Do you actually own any time, or do you just have, is that just another thing that you have stewardship over? And that song, Time, is a reminder to treat that time that you have with some reverence.
Wow. Okay. That's pretty deep. I'm wondering if stewardship, time is something that we have a responsibility to care for in a proper way.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe stewardship isn't necessarily the right word for it. I'm not sure, because we control time, but we don't control how much we have, or I don't know. You're in a rabbit hole that I'm not sure I know how to follow you.
I love rabbit holes.
So do my dogs.
Well, I found the idea of time ownership or time stewardship fascinating, because when you start looking at the other things that you can possess, there's this, like if land is the most important thing to you, what do you give up? Right? What do you have to do? And so when I think it was 2 shows ago, we were talking about property, and we were trying to answer the question, if we live on stolen land, and we determined that, well, you acquire land through rebellion or through legal means or transfer, or you have to fight for it, right? Yeah. But you're dependent on somebody else's recognition of your right to that land,
That's
right?
the ownership part, yeah.
Yeah, and so if land is the most important thing to you, then you got to give up something, and that something is usually people, right? Like if I want to possess the United States, we had to push people out of the way, right?
Right.
If money is the most important thing to you, what are you giving up? You're giving up time. You're going to exchange labor, your time, right? In exchange for money. So there's a sacrifice involved. If power is the most important thing to you, what are you giving up?
Everything,
right? Yeah, your freedom, really, right? If it's security, and what's that old saying about, well, then you're going to lose liberty, right? Yeah. And if it's now this is going to be a 2001 Space Odyssey reference here. If it's the mission, right? If, in that case, the computer followed the mission, HAL, right? And ended up killing people in the process because that was greater than morality.
Right.
Of course, the HAL couldn't have morality, but we can, and we sometimes, in pursuit of a mission or an ideal, we give up our morality, right? Time seems a little different to me. Like if that's what we hold more reverent than all of these other things.
But you can't hold time.
No, but you have that temporary possession of it.
Okay.
We need a break.
This is a whiskey conversation, I think. But with that, we're going to take a quick break. This is Ceasefire with Dale and Ron. We'll be back in just a moment. Bernie has its own bookshop. In fact, it's called the Bernie Bookshop. Hi, I'm Dale Adams, inviting you to get lost. Get lost in a good book in our relaxed and casual atmosphere. We have a wide and eclectic selection in the Bernie Bookshop. We pride ourselves on finding what you're looking for. We do author meet and greets, host writing workshops, and can connect you with a good book club. And your young ones will absolutely love our kids section at the Bernie Bookshop. And while we want you to get lost, we're easy to find, as we're in the heart of Bernie, at the back of the Richter Tavern building. We are the Bernie Bookshop. Welcome back to Ceasefire with Dale and Ron is leading us down the time rabbit hole, and we are talking about how you can hold on to time, and I'm just not grasping it, so to speak.
Well, I think what I'm trying to say is that all of those other things that we talked about, power, land, money, your ideology, all of those things come at great sacrifice.
Yeah.
But if you revere your time and you use it, you have stewardship over it, and you put that above those other things, that I don't know that there's a negative sacrifice that you can equate to that like you can to the other things. And so I don't offend my fellow Christians. I think, God first, everything else, in order after that. So I'm not saying that time is greater than God. I'm just saying that of the things, if we don't own anything, right? If we can't permanently own anything, then how do you order things in importance? I would say that time is more reverent than land or power or anything else, right?
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's, and again, I'm not saying time's greater than God. I'm saying, I'm just saying of the gifts that we have from God, time is probably the most important.
I'd almost say time is like a sort of a flowing gift. Mm-hmm. You're continually getting it, and you're continually using it in some fashion.
Right.
You can almost think of it, some reason it's popped into my head, this image of a loom where you've got all the threads going in, and then you've got this point where they're all being intertwined, and you've got the cloth coming out the other side. We have all this time coming towards us we are weaving it together into our past. And our stewardship is what happens in that weaving process. What are we making out of that time? And that's our responsibility, is to do that responsibly.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's a good way to look at it.
Time's an interesting concept because it goes in a lot of different directions.
It does. But to bring it back to what we were talking about,
Yes.
because this is not a show about Pink Floyd or 2001: A Space Odyssey, but a show on stewardship. Time is yet another thing. Like all the other things that we've talked about, land or gifts or talents, it's another thing that we have stewardship over.
But we think little about it,
Right.
I think. I don't think we give enough thought to our stewardship of our time. I know I don't.
I don't either. I love the song, the whole composition of it, the solo, everything, the lyrics. But it resonates sometimes in a deeply impactful and like, oh gosh, regretful way. You know, it's like, how much time have I wasted? You know, and I remember traveling somewhere in West Texas with a friend of mine who had not really done much with his life, and that song came on, and he had to turn it off because it impacted him that negatively. It's certainly a song that makes you think.
Yeah, it does.
You know?
It does reflect.
And then, in your end days, I hope I'm not there yet, but I think in those final moments of our life, if you are one of those who doesn't die suddenly but has time to sit there and think about this impending death, I think that's what you're going to focus on more than anything else, more than what kind of home you lived in, what kind of cars you drove, what kind of career you had, how much fame you had. I think you're going to spend a lot of time dwelling on how you used your time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. You're right.
And that, I believe, goes back to the stewardship thing then, across all areas of our life. What are we doing with the things, the gifts that we have, the time that we have? Are we using them in a purposeful and meaningful way, or are we just simply wasting them on dumb things that have no permanency?
Yeah, yeah.
And I will add to that politics for a moment, if I might deviate, because... And I was just having this conversation with somebody the other day because I felt this way a long time that, obviously you and I are former elected officials, and I do believe in the institutions that man has created. I believe in our Constitution. I think it's good if we adhere to it. But sometimes we get so busy fighting about the left or the right, red or blue. We get consumed with the news that we watch and who's sitting in the White House and all of this other stuff, which becomes a form of idolatry, right?
Yeah.
And it's meaningless, as Solomon would say. It's all completely meaningless and a chasing of the wind. And at the end of our life, we're going to reflect on the things that were really, really important and how we wasted them in pursuit of these other things that are only temporary.
I think there's a saying that on a person's deathbed, they never think that they spent too much time with their family.
Yeah.
They'll think about, I spent too much time working. I wish I'd spent more time with my family. I think relationships are probably one of the most important things out there of all different types. Mm-hmm. And I think your point about stewardship of your time brings to mind a lot about how we sort of neglect relationships and family and whatnot in pursuit of all these other things. And in politics is all these things we get antsy about and worked up about and all this kind of stuff. And then it goes away and you realize you could have spent that time being constructive or building relationships with somebody or spending time with your family and all this stuff. And you spent all your time fretting about somebody you didn't like or did like or whatnot.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's sad, really. How many people go through life consumed with all of these things that, as the old saying goes, you can't take it with you.
Yeah, yeah.
Which reminds me of another great classic rock song, Alan Parsons. I think that is the title of it. You can't take it with you.
Yes, that's a good song.
It's a very good song. I like that. And we all know that. We've all heard that saying, I think in anybody's life, they'll hear it 1,000 times. You can't take it with you.
Yeah.
And that should be a reminder that all of this stuff that we're just so worked up over is nothing. right?
Boy, that's positive. Okay, I'm going to take a different tack and change our direction just a little bit in the last part of the show here, because stewardship is also a positive thing. Taking care of something or somebody or being responsible for something sometimes sounds like it's overwhelming and why me kind of stuff, but it's really good for you. I have a little bit of land, and I go out there and I'll chop some cedar or clear something or plant a tree or whatnot, and I feel really good about that. And I think there's something intrinsic to being human, that we are responsible to be stewards of our world. And I think that fulfills something in us. And so when we do it, we feel good about it. Mm-hmm. When you clean your house even, you feel good when you're done. The British actually did a study on mental health and trying to compare drugs and stuff like that. And they compared it to gardening. And gardening actually was as good as any of the drugs that they had for dealing with mental health, because people got out there and they took care of something. They grew something, they planted something, they did all the different things you do in the dirt. And it helped them mentally as well as any of the drugs that they were giving them. And I think it just shows that stewardship is a positive for us, and it's a calling. It's something that we all need to do, regardless in which fashion it is. You may want to be a steward of the land, you may want to be a steward in a classroom for the children, you want to be whatever kind of steward you want to be. It's a good thing, and it's intrinsic to us as humans and special. And I think we all need to pursue it as much as we can. And I think that's an important thing.
I agree, because it makes you look outside of yourself.
Yes.
And that keeps you grounded. I think that's a very good thing.
Yeah.
It makes me think a lot about how in the United States, but even across the world, marriage is in decline. Mm-hmm. Families are in decline, right? And we've become very self-centered.
Yes, everything turns inward.
Yes.
Yes.
And we're looking at instant gratification instead of long-term gratification. And we're looking at consumption and possessions instead of the future.
Right. The seventh generation.
Right.
You know, our descendants. How are we making the world better for them? What are we doing to prepare the world for them?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that, that perspective helps us look at things. Sometimes we get caught up again in our ideologies, right? And so conservatives can sometimes, kind of cringe when they hear about environmentalism, right?
Yeah.
But
they're the ultimate environmentalists, honestly. I mean, Teddy Roosevelt established the parks.
Right.
And conservative means conserving
conservation, right?
The good of the past.
Yeah.
You know?
And if you take that seventh generation concept that we talked about earlier, and you think about, okay, well, I have this land, and there might be immediate gratification in selling it and developing it, and I'm not anti-development, I'm just saying if you looked at it that way, you might miss that bigger picture.
Right.
What does this look like 7 generations from now?
Yeah, it's a long ways. I mean, our forefathers were about 7 generations ago, right? Something like that?
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit more. It's a long time.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring up the book I brought out, which is sort of about stewardship, and some people may not like this, but... So the book is called Wanted, Mountain Cedars by Elizabeth McCreevy, and I have a little bit of land, and I cut cedar, and I wanted to learn more about cedar, and she's like a cedar expert. But she wrote this book as an effort to rehabilitate the reputation of mountain cedars. And it's a little bit controversial because nobody wants to like them, but they have a role in our ecology. And the book is awesome because it has great research into the ecological history of the hill country and the biology of mountain cedars and grasses and other things. And we've got actually several copies at the Bernie Bookshop, and it's a great book for anybody that has land and wants to learn about mountain cedars. And if you are a steward of our land, I would recommend that you read it because I learned a lot. Mountain cedars actually aren't all bad.
My sinuses disagree with you.
Yeah, well, that's on you. Learn to live with it.
Well, I'd like to tell you what to do with that cedar. But this is a family show. So.
Well, I think it's an interesting conversation. I don't think we're ever going to get away from wanting to own things. But I think if we can refocus our concept of ownership towards stewardship, I think that would be a great thing for everybody involved.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Oh, great topic.
Okay.
Thanks for letting me go down my rabbit holes.
Yes, those were interesting. They're good. They're good. Maybe we'll do some more over lunch or something like that.
There we go.
Well, thank you for listening, everybody, to this fascinating conversation. Any of this, you can always go to bernieradio.com and listen to our podcast or any of the other ones that they've got there. And we'll see you next week.